The Netflix series The Crown has been intriguing audiences since 2016 with its high budget and high drama interpretation of the life and times of the British royal family. However, producers this week disgusted many royalists as it was revealed by the Mail that the tragic final moments of the late Princess Diana's life have been brutally recreated for Series 6 during filming in Paris late last year. Despite showrunners promising not to depict the exact moment of the crash impact, shocking leaked images of the mangled Mercedes that was secretly smuggled to Paris under tarpaulin by the film crew have caused outrage as it becomes clear that Netflix value the sick shock factor of Diana's final moments over any sort of dignity or respect for the crash victims and their loved ones.
All right, this latest royal commentary is seriously sparking debate. Former royal butler Paul Burrell says we're now watching the dismantling of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And according to him, their entire brand could eventually collapse. That's a huge statement. Because whether you support Harry and Meghan or not, there's no denying they became one of the most powerful and talked about couples in the world after leaving royal life. So the question is their influence actually fading? Or are critics simply trying to push that narrative because public opinion has become more divided? Let's break it all down. When Paul Burrell talks about the dismantling of Harry and Meghan, he's not talking about one single event. He's talking about what he sees as a gradual shift in how the public views them, and specifically, their brand. Now, the Sussex brand is bigger than just interviews or documentaries. It includes their image as independent royals, their media projects, their public influence, their activism, their relationship with the royal family, and even the emotional narrative surrounding their departure from royal life. Burrell believes that image is beginning to weaken. Because according to critics, the same themes keep repeating.
And one of those loved ones, somewhat ironically, has recently spoken about the emotional impact of seeing images of his dying mother in that Paris tunnel back in 1997.
All I saw was the back of my mum's head, slumped on the back seat. There were other more gruesome photographs, but I will be eternally grateful to him for denying me the ability to inflict pain on myself by saying that. Because that's the kind of stuff that sticks in your mind forever.
Which I completely understand. But surely this raises the obvious but uncomfortable question. How on earth can Prince Harry continue to take Netflix's millions as payment for his own projects when they are prepared to exploit his mother's memory for financial and commercial gain, time and again? There's only one person I want to speak to on this. It's Princess Diana's former butler. She described him as her rock, Paul Burrell. Paul, you're obviously a very close friend of the late Princess Diana. How do you feel, firstly, about seeing Netflix recreate the car crash and actually move the car, the mangled wreckage of the car or a fake version of the car to Paris? How has it made you feel, Paul?
Well, Dan, I think Netflix have just plunged to new depths and depicting the car crash scene and, in fact, creating a replica of the crash car is distasteful, it's insensitive, and it's heartless. We all know how the princess died. We don't need to see it portrayed in graphic detail on TV. It's sensationalism at its worst. I thought, actually, that depicting the Queen as a cold, heartless, distant woman was bad enough, and depicting Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mother, as an actress pulled through a hedge backwards when she had such grace and elegance during her lifetime. But this takes the biscuit. I mean, honestly, they're not thinking about any sensibility towards family members or people who love the princess by revisiting that scene in such graphic detail. Had it been your mother, your sister, your daughter, would you want to see that recreated on the screen? No. She was so deeply loved in this country. There are many ways which Netflix could have shown you the princess had died. A flash of light, maybe, something very simple. But to go into such detail, I think it's disgusting. I really do. I would appeal to the producers of The Crown to do the right thing and delete those scenes because they shouldn't be seen and they shouldn't be revisited.
I mean, look, while I have great sympathy for Prince Harry and the trauma that he continues to suffer around his mother's car crash, I really struggle, Paul, now with the fact that he continues to take the millions and millions of pounds from Netflix, because it feels to me, not for the first time, he is now putting money ahead of morality.
Well, that's Harry's game now. Unfortunately, he's got into bed with Netflix. He's got into bed with the devil, and he's taken the money. And quite frankly, he should give all that money back and walk away from it to do the decent thing. Just like he did with Frogmore Cottages, he gave the money back. The money which he used for the taxpayers' money, which he used for Frogmore Cottages, would be returned to him. He should do the same thing with Netflix, because Netflix are not a company which he should be rubbing shoulders with after what we've just seen, and knowing how it upset him and William at the time. I was there. I saw what happened. Does he really want to work with a company who are going to portray all of that for the world yet again? I'm really not a fan of The Crown.
And especially, Paul, when Harry, over the past few years, has set himself up to be almost like some sort of moral arbiter of the media. You know, he is so quick to criticise newspapers and photographers, but all of a sudden, when it comes to him making money, he's actually turned into a bit of a propagandist for Netflix and The Crown, while the rest of the family are loath to talk about it because they feel the impact of The Crown deeply, especially King Charles, because he knows how damaging The Crown has been to his reputation with young people around the world. Harry, actually, in interviews, has actively promoted The Crown and said how much he loves watching it.
Royal tension, family conflict, public grievances, media battles, and some people are starting to feel fatigue from it all. But let's rewind for a second. When Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties, it was one of the biggest royal stories in decades. Suddenly, they weren't just members of the monarchy anymore. They became global media figures operating independently. And honestly, at first the momentum was massive. The Oprah interview dominated headlines worldwide. The Netflix series generated huge attention. Harry's memoir Spare became one of the most talked about celebrity books in years. For a while, it looked like they had successfully reinvented themselves. They controlled their own story. They reached global audiences directly. And they became central figures in conversations about royalty, media pressure, race, privacy, and celebrity culture. That's not small. This is where opinions start to split. Critics like Burrell argue that the strategy may now be backfiring. They believe the constant cycle of revelations and public commentary has started to hurt the couple's image rather than strengthen it. And one argument you hear more often now is this. People initially sympathized with Harry and Meghan, but over time, some viewers began feeling overwhelmed by the ongoing conflict narrative.
Well, it beggars belief, doesn't it? I mean, especially in this coronation year, he's not promoting the family at all. He's sort of taking it apart, and we're watching the dismantling of Harry and Meghan, because their brand, I think, is going to collapse. I don't think it's going to survive, because they are only relevant because they are members of the royal family. They're only relevant because they have royal news to tell. So, you know, how long will that last? And how long do we have to suffer Harry washing dirty laundry in public? Because that's what he's doing. The rest of the family are doing the right thing. They're staying silent. They're having great dignity in silence. And look at Kate and William. Look at the difference between Harry and Meghan on one side of the world and Kate and William on this side of the world. Kate and William are not putting a foot wrong. They're doing exactly what they should be doing. They are representing the royal family in an immaculate way. They are, after all, our future king and queen.
Indeed. And look, I do have to say, Paul, I think you're right, by the way. I think the brand is completely collapsing. I think Harry and Meghan are becoming a laughingstock in the US, actually. They're not taken as seriously over there as they are here, but they're viewed as a joke because people laugh now about the South Park depiction of their worldwide privacy tour. It is a joke. But for me, I think what the Netflix deal shows, and this hypocrisy shows, is that they can no longer claim to take the moral high ground as they have for so many years. Because what this proves is that if it's about the big bucks, if it's about the moolah, they will put any morals to one side.
And I worry if they come back to Britain, the country which they've rejected and abandoned, I worry what the people of this country might say. because I personally feel that they should stay in America, have a happy life, bring up their children in an American way, and not come back to Britain, because there isn't a place here for them. And I wonder what's going to happen with the coronation coming towards us, whether or not Harry will be brave enough to sit amongst his family members whom he's thrown under the bus. I do think that Meghan will stay in the States. I think she will stay there to look after the children, especially as it's a birthday time. But I honestly think that Harry will come because, you know, he's not the brightest spark in the royal family. And I think he will come and try and pull it off because, you know, it's a story which he can then go back to the States and relate in another book or with Netflix or wherever he wants to do.
And guess what that's all about, Paul? It all comes down to one thing.
Of course it is. It's all about being relevant. And he's only relevant if he has another royal story to tell.
What a tragic state of affairs. What a very,
it's so sad. I'm very sad about
place.
it all.
Indeed. Well, look, Paul, such a pleasure to speak to you. You know, we are all sending huge strength and love to you right now as well. We know you're going through this cancer battle. You are being so brave, so strong. So you know we're all behind you. Paul Burrell will speak very soon. You will. You absolutely will. Thank you, Paul.
That doesn't exactly sound irrelevant. In fact, some would argue Harry and Meghan succeeded in doing exactly what they wanted, creating a life outside royal control while still maintaining global influence. Now, whether people like that influence is a separate debate. But influence itself? It's still clearly there. At its core, this debate is really about expectations. Some people expected Harry and Meghan to quietly move on after leaving royal life. Instead, they stayed highly visible and continued telling their story. For supporters, that's empowerment. For critics, it feels repetitive and damaging. And that's why comments like Paul Burrell's resonate with certain audiences, because they reflect growing skepticism about where the Sussex story goes next. At the end of the day, whether the Sussex brand is collapsing depends entirely on how you define success. Paul Burrell sees decline. Supporters see resilience and reinvention. But one thing is undeniable. Harry and Meghan are still dominating headlines years after leaving the royal family. And that alone says something. What do you think? Is the Sussex brand falling apart or evolving into something completely different? Drop your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you in the next video.